Hello, my name is Hannah Twaddell. I am a transportation planning consultant with the firm ICF. On behalf of the Baltimore Regional Transportation Board and Baltimore Metropolitan Council, I welcome you to this pre-workshop video for our long-range transportation plan exploratory scenario planning process. The purpose of this video is to prepare you to participate in the workshops with an understanding of how the scenarios we will be discussing were developed and the kinds of questions we want to address at the workshop. First, a little bit of background about the Long-Range Transportation Plan. It's a federally required plan for the region, updated every 4 years. The current plan was adopted in 2023. The updated plan will be adopted in 2027. A few of the key long-range transportation plan goals we are addressing in this scenario planning exercise include accessibility, safety, the natural environment, and economic prosperity. One of the important things to know in relation to our scenario planning exercise is that the long-range plan uses a scenario planning tool called a travel model. This model is designed to forecast transportation needs and to test alternative transportation investment packages based on population and employment growth forecasts developed by state and local planning agencies. The assumptions we're using in our exploratory scenario planning process are based on some of the data from the travel model. Our exploratory scenario planning exercise allows us to consider a wide variety of ideas and alternatives to the assumptions embedded in the travel model. By studying the effects of different combinations of policy decisions and external forces, we can generate new ideas to explore and analyze in more depth during the next long-range plan update. At the workshops, we will share the findings from our first run of experimental scenarios we've generated with a strategic scenario planning model called Vision Eval. This model was developed by a coalition of states and regional agencies with support from the Federal Highway Administration. We'll ask you to help us interpret and understand the policy decisions that show the most promise for achieving regional transportation goals. We're also going to reflect with you on how transportation needs and policy decisions could be influenced by external conditions related to economic markets, environmental conditions, and technological advances. The process we've been through so far to develop the scenarios we'll be talking about at the workshops began last fall. We did some national research, talked to other MPOs and agencies that have done similar exercises, and we conducted a brief public poll to get a sense of priority issues and outcomes to consider, and then we set up our model. We're now ready to discuss the initial results with you. After the workshops, we'll develop some refinements to the scenarios we've created, maybe adding some new information or considering some things that we may have missed. Ultimately, we'll provide a set of recommendations and considerations for the next long-range plan update regarding risks or opportunities or implications of the alternative futures we've examined. The results from the brief poll we conducted last winter offer a snapshot of concerns among people of this region with regard to the goals and indicators we are testing in the scenarios. More than 600 people responded to the survey. While the group of participants doesn't fully encompass the region's demographics, the results give us some sense of priorities expressed by area residents. Key measures of success, according to survey respondents, include access to employment, safety for all travelers, especially pedestrians, multimodal transportation options, household costs for transportation and housing, and environmental impacts of travel choices, such as the generation of greenhouse gas emissions. Some of the types of policy decisions that were of great interest to the folks that participated in this survey included ideas for increasing the use of transit or biking and walking facilities, looking at new ways to fund transportation that could also incentivize travel behavior toward the goals that we're trying to achieve, and testing ideas about growth and development, such as the location and amount of future housing around the region. Finally, we also asked people to consider what kinds of external forces we should explore. They showed interest in technologies such as electric vehicles and telework trends, market concerns around affordable housing, and environmental concerns such as the effects of more extreme weather in the future. Based in part upon the responses to the survey, as well as a consideration of data sources and the model capabilities, we came up with a few performance measures for examining the effectiveness of the scenarios. In relation to the long-range plan goals, the scenario measures focus on mobility, accessibility, safety, prosperity, and environmental outcomes. We also apply a principle across the board to consider how the scenarios may impact some populations differently than others. To examine fairness in the model, we integrated data from an inventory of opportunity areas throughout the region, developed by BMC for the 2025 Regional Fair Housing Plan. The study compiled different indicators that correspond to life outcomes, such as education, community strength, and employment. The lower opportunity areas in the index have scores in the lowest 2 quintiles of these opportunity indicators. We've also prepared some information to consider the influence of potential environmental changes on the scenario outcomes by using statewide model data on potential impacts of sea level rise and major storm events that would cause inundation of various land areas. Now we'll move into describing how the scenarios are built. The Vision Eval model uses inputs we call policy levers, as well as external forces. The policy levers we've tested involve different types of transportation improvements, alternative land use and housing decisions, and a variety of transportation fees and incentives. The external forces in the model focus on economic and technological changes. We also considered the Vision Eval model results in light of the inundation scenarios presented on the previous slide. To build the model, we created various packages of data that represent different types or levels of changes within each of the categories. The first level in every category reflects the assumptions that are in the current long-range plan. In the case of transportation investments, level 0 reflects the current long-range transportation plan projects. We then built up to 4 additional levels of changes for each category. The different transportation investment levels include, for example, 2 versions of expanded transit service and higher bike and walk trips, and a couple of different sets of policy strategies to make traffic move more efficiently. Here is more detail about the variables within the transportation investment levels. I won't go through all of these in detail in this presentation, but we want you to have a sense of the assumptions that are being used to build the scenarios. For example, levels 1 and 2 represent varying intensities of multimodal investments, while levels 3 and 4 represent 2 different strategies for adding more effective capacity to our roadway system, with and without adding new roadway lanes. The levels of land use and housing policy levers have to do with looking at different patterns of growth across the region in terms of organizing housing around transit, around jobs, or around both transit and jobs. We increased the housing and population numbers in the alternatives to level 0 based on a study about regional pent-up demand for additional housing. Here are a few maps and charts to give you a sense of what those different housing strategy policies might look like. The Level 1 package locates additional housing around transit hubs. The Level 2 package locates new housing near job centers. The Level 3 package clusters new housing evenly around both transit and job centers. And the Level 4 package disperses the additional housing in the same pattern as in the current long-range transportation plan forecast. The other type of policy lever that we incorporated into the model focuses on fees and incentives that can fund transportation investments while also incentivizing travel behaviors consistent with our goals. For example, Level 1 involves raising the existing gas tax and adding a new pay-as-you-drive fee. Level 2 involves doubling the Level 1 fees, while Level 3 involves combining the Level 1 inputs with additional fees for urban parking and for rush hour travel. Within the economic external forces category, the levels reflect different combinations of growth in regional employment and per capita income. And finally, the external influences of different technology advancements include different combinations of electric versus fossil fuel-powered vehicles, potential increases in teleworking, and different ways we might use car share services, such as Uber and Lyft. The fourth technology level reflects the possibility that self-driving vehicles might predominate the region's future vehicle fleet. Here is a summary of the policy categories and levels for quick reference. And here is a similar summary of the external force categories and levels. Now, I'll describe the basic process of how we create scenarios. We start by combining data from a different level within each category. For example, we can combine the Level 1 assumptions from the transportation investments category with the data for Level 3 in the land use category and the information from Level 2 in the fees category. Then we add assumptions about external forces by adding Level 2 data from the economic category and Level 4 from the technology group. The model generates anticipated performance outcomes from each unique combination of levels, drawing upon a large body of research about the complex, dynamic, if-then impacts on travel behavior and system performance that are associated with different policy decisions and external forces. In our hypothetical scenario, this combination of levels generates an increase in the number of transit trips and a decrease in daily vehicle miles traveled. We use the Vision Eval model to create not just one scenario, but hundreds of scenarios. We test all the possible combinations of all the categories and levels to generate a large data set of potential actions that could advance our goals for regional mobility, accessibility, and safety, as well as desired economic and environmental conditions. Within this set of 615 hypothetical scenarios, 121 scenarios include data from the Level 1 transportation investment assumptions, while 168 scenarios reflect the land use level 1 package, and 183 scenarios incorporate the fees level 1 data. Once we have the whole set of scenarios, we winnow them down to find the policy levers and external forces that are most closely associated with the goals we want to achieve. For example, when we look for the scenario combinations that contribute to high transit ridership, we find a subset of 103 scenarios that produce good results for all areas, and 46 scenarios that show promise for lower opportunity areas. In this hypothetical exercise, the predominant policy levers that contribute to higher transit ridership in the lower opportunity areas include Transportation Investment Level 1, which is the current long-range plan package, Land Use Level 1, which involved distributing additional households around transit, and a particularly strong showing from the Fees Level 2 data, which reflects doubling the gas tax and the pay-as-you-drive vehicle miles traveled fee. We also look at the external forces that influence these outcomes. In this case, the external forces associated with our 46 selected scenarios include both versions of job and income growth, and they strongly lean toward the technology level 2 inputs, which focused on increasing the use of car sharing, particularly in high occupancy car share vehicles. At the workshop, we'll share the most impactful results of the analyses we've conducted using the actual model data, and we will ask for your insights and thoughts about the logic and feasibility of the policy levers and external forces that appear to have the most influence towards achieving our goals. We're happy to talk to you anytime before or after the workshop, and we're very much looking forward to seeing you and hearing your thoughts at the meeting. Thank you very much for your willingness to support this exciting process of preparing new ideas for the long-range transportation plan.